Okay, this is the process that I do for fabricating crown. Obviously you want at least one tooth in front and back of the prepared tooth, and ideally kind of the same one tooth in front and back, so that when everything is lined up there is one tooth on either side that's scannable. And we can see that this is aligned here. There's the green dot, so that shows that it's aligned. If it's not, then you can actually click on that, and there would be a free model that you can kind of drag over and get it into alignment. So first step after scanning is to establish the margin. So basically we can zoom in, that's with the scroll wheel, and trace. And when you're tracing, basically you're just left clicking over and over, and it doesn't have to be exact to start. You know, kind of get it close to the edge, but you can do really pretty long distances between the dots. And then that very last dot, you need to click on top of the original dot. So we can see that there are margins that aren't quite right here. So we want to make sure and drag those out. There's a couple options for that. You can either like grab a hold of it and pull on it like that, or if you're close to it, you can actually just click in the area that you want it to go to. So just like that. And then I usually try to look at it from an angle that's beyond upright. I don't know if that makes sense, but I can also see the rest of the tooth on the outer edge, whereas if I had it like this, I can't quite see the edge of that tooth. So you want to move it far enough out so that you can see where that edge is. And then once you get that close, sometimes it's helpful to do like this right here. This gives you your color view, and you can do this, basically just turn it on and off and kind of look at those margins in different areas. We can see like up here, it's not quite where we need it, so we want to expand that. Sometimes it's just kind of a visual anomaly. It's not quite what it appears to be. And then I usually like to look at it from, we can remove these, and I usually like to just by clicking on this right here. I like to look at it from the buckle. So just kind of make sure, and if you're not sure, you can actually drag it down further, and we can see that we've gone a little bit too far. That's what I like to do, is just go beyond that margin and then pull it back up. So we can kind of look down the edges here, and that looks good. We can kind of look up here, and when in doubt, go further over the edge. I'd rather go a little bit too wide, and we can adjust that rather than going too short and having a short crown. Okay, so once you've done that, then you want to click on orientation, which is down here. So this is an important step. You want to get the tooth into the center of the circle, so just press straight down on the scroll wheel and move it, so you can move it around, but move it so that the tooth is in the center of the scroll. We can see this says mesial, so we want to move this tooth to the mesial. Just kind of clicking and dragging here with the left clicker. And then once we have that, we want to look at it from the distal. So we're clicking down here on the distal, and what I'll usually do is I'll pull it down so that I can see all of the cusps, and then drag it back up until all of those cusps look like they're about aligned. And we can see this red line right here. We want to click on the buckle and then look at it from the buckle, and then this should be pretty much aligned with that margin. You can see that this one has a little bit of a kind of a dip, but this is pretty good. Okay, so going back a little bit, we want this line to be pretty sure at the buckle margin. Okay, so click orientation, get rid of these, and we already have our margin established. So now we can go to design, and it's a little tall, so we'll grab it, bring it down, and apply it. Okay, and now we are going to start adjusting. So this, we don't need to worry about this one. This is how much room there is for like cement. So now we can move it buccally or lingually, make sure that these cusps are all fairly close to the adjacent teeth, so we can see that, you know, these cusps can be moved out a little bit, and we can fix this in a little bit. So we want to make sure that we apply it, and then we go to the freeform tools. Rubber tooth is almost exclusively what I use here. So first thing, we can make sure that the contacts are closed generally, so it's just grabbing and dragging. You can see obviously this is bare tooth right there, so we want to close that just by bringing it up, and we'll do more with that in a little bit. So we want to check the material thickness, which is this one right here. And this is actually a zirconia crown that we sent, so not really super worried about the actual thickness, but in general we want greens and blues, not yellows. That's a little bit too weak, especially for a molar. You know, if it's like a premolar or an anterior, not such a big deal. So yeah, I usually try to be methodical, just look at the buccals, the linguals. You know, we can see like the cusp heights aren't quite right. So we can drag this cusp up. And yellows and oranges around the margins are just fine. And then same thing, you know, sometimes people wear their cusps down, so it's not always going to be what it looks like it should be. But yeah, once we have that, then we can go ahead and, so we've checked our material thickness, and this we're going to be checking when we check occlusion. We also kind of want to make sure that, you know, it looks like these central grooves aren't quite lined up, so we want to make sure that the central grooves are aligned. Now we can check occlusion. That is this one. So you click it once and it's just a solid block. Click it one more time and it becomes translucent. And again, this is a zirconia crown, so you know we're able to go thinner, but in general, again, you want greens and blues. If we click this, then we can see exactly where it's hitting heavily. So from there, we're going to do the cross section. So they call it slice plane. So the first one is, you know, shows you the buccal lingual cross section. I usually like to do mesial distal, just my own personal preference. So then you just basically continue using the rubber tooth and drag that down, and then you're going to grab the edge of this. So if you're zoomed in a really long way, then you're not going to see the edge of this, so you can zoom out a little bit and then be able to grab it more easily. And we can see that we have room to increase the material thickness right here. And we always want our contacts to be on the cusps and in the grooves. You know, that's just good typical occlusion. So if we were going to try to get a good contact here, it would be in the groove of this opposing tooth. We can see that here's the cusp of that opposing tooth, here's the groove of that opposing tooth, and then it's hitting too heavily here. So we would want a contact here and a contact here on the cusp, and then we don't want anything on these inclines. So just keep moving it, and sometimes if you move it too far, you need to move it back. Sometimes you can still do those adjustments. So it kind of is it varies from tooth to tooth. But yeah, same thing. You can see that there was a contact on the incline of this tooth. We want it more in that groove, so I'm just dragging it and sticking it right there. And same thing. We do want contacts where possible, and this is on an incline, this is on the cheek side of that tooth, so I want to make sure and remove that pretty much completely. Okay, so now we made it to the end of that tooth, so now we can get rid of the slice plane by clicking it 1-2 more times, and now we just have these purple light blue areas. Now we're going to do this one here, the contact refinement, and we just circle these. It doesn't have, you can just do it really quickly, like, and really just want to get rid of all the color. That's pretty much all we're looking for. So that looks good. I might do one more here just because that is not on a cusp or a groove. And that is looking good. So now we have our contacts established. So we've done our material thickness. We've kind of got our contacts initially, our interproximal contacts, and now we have our occlusion done. We can look at the material thickness from here. Obviously it's going to be thin because this is a zirconia crown that we sent, but now we want to check our flossing contacts. We're going to get rid of these adjacent teeth by clicking this icon right here, and we're going to click that material thickness one again, and then it shows this. So we'll go back to the freeform tools in rubber tooth, and then we can just adjust this. So this is, there would be an open contact if we left it just with dark blue. So we want to pull it out, and I'm just left clicking and kind of pulling it what feels like away from the tooth. And with molars, ideally we want broad contacts. So if we look at this molar, we can see, if you look closely, there's this area right here where there would be a food trap if we just left it like this. So sometimes we can just grab it like that and increase that contact, and then go ahead and start looking again. And if you just want to move a smaller amount, like if it's making too much change each time you move it, then decrease the size of your rubber tooth. So right now it's at 1.5, oftentimes 0.9 to 1 works pretty well. And you can notice that I'm actually clicking away from where that contact is and dragging to get that broader contact. So that actually looks pretty good. You can kind of see the light blue with the dark blue underneath it. That's usually a nice contact. And then we'll do the same thing over here. So I'm going to kind of drag away from the tooth again, and same thing over here. So yeah, you can kind of see that this could be a little bit heavy, but I'd rather adjust it than have it open. So now if we look from the occlusal again, we can see that this is nice and closed. There's no food trap there, and it actually could be a little bit here. So this is kind of how detail oriented you want to be. You want to make sure that there aren't those little spots where somebody's going to end up getting a bunch of debris trapped in there. Okay, so now that we've done that adjusting, sometimes we end up at changing the occlusion, so we do want to double check that. So again, click it twice. Actually, it's still looking good. So now that we've done that, we can check material thickness, make sure that we haven't gotten any thin areas. But now you want to go to the mill, and sometimes you have I-12, but C14 is the only option here. I'll usually get rid of these adjacent teeth by clicking here. And then you want to look at where the sprue is. It's not usually a big deal, but you just want to make sure it's not too close to the margin. Then you'll simulate it. If you had the I-12, you can do detailed or standard. I'll usually do standard first, even if it's I-12, just to see what kind of outcome we get. But with C14, you always have to do standard. So go ahead and click OK, and there it is. Now we want to look at the gingival, basically look at the inside of the crown. This is called overmilling. Basically, it's the tooth has sharper edges than what the burr can adjust to. So it actually has to remove more material to get these areas clear of the prep. But that looks good. So now we'll just go back to the occlusal, and then you would go ahead and send it, either standard or detailed. Okay, and that is it.